Page 126.
Shana Tova, a good year. Gamar Chatima Tova, may you be inscribed for good in the book of life this year, 5,784. It is good to be together on this Erev Yom Kippur. In a moment, we'll hear a beautiful rendition of Kol Nidre. I wanted to spend a brief moment talking about ritual, of which Kol Nidre plays a central role this evening, but there are other rituals as well. A couple I think I probably haven't explained in a while for those who may not know. One is this robe that I wear, and the other are the shoes on my feet, which I'll show you in a second. The robe is a kittel. It is plain. And the white, while it makes us think of this high holy day season, the plainness in that it has no pockets, it's not ordained in any particular way, is the message that we are all equal on Yom Kippur before God and before each other, equal in our ability for Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Ra, our good inclination and our lesser inclination. So Judaism is very much, as I would say, small d democratic. The other are these shoes. They are not the latest in rabbinic footwear. They are observing the prohibition on a major fast day of not wearing leather. Leather is a sign of extravagance and, believe it or not, comfort. And therefore, we are not too extravagant on this day. We are focusing more on what is inside than on what is outside. Kol Nidre, something of confusion and mystery, really, in that it's lasted so long within our tradition. A prayer that basically says, any vow that I make in the coming year, if I'm not able to keep it, God, don't judge me harshly for it, don't punish me for it. It has been used by those outside of the Jewish community against us at times. suggesting that we are somehow unable to keep our vows, to keep our promises, and yet it sustains us. It sustains us in the music itself, which somehow is the right music for this time of year and this season of Yom Kippur, this season of introspection. But also in that, like all ritual, it gives us a sense of intention, a sense of thoughtfulness about how we act. So even something that says, "Don't punish me if I break a vow," immediately puts us in a mindset of having to focus on what vows are we going to make for ourselves in the year to come. How are we going to commit to do better? And between that sense of intention and the beauty and the poignancy of the music itself, it puts us in the absolute right frame of mind for Yom Kippur. And with that, I'll ask our cellist, Matt Beckman, and our pianist, Karen Engebretson, to come up for Kol Nidre. Praying is more than merely reciting words. It's about encountering aspects of ourselves we rarely, if ever, see, shifting our perspective and seeing all things anew, awakening our spirits and our sense of wonder. Prayer is about connection with ourselves, with the community of other seekers, and with someone or something beyond ourselves. On the High Holy Days in particular, our prayer has some additional goals. We're trying to remove our protective armor, ego, self-deception, rationalization, external and internal makeup posturing, anything that keeps us from seeing ourselves as we really are. We're trying to experience both our vulnerability and the true source of our strength, and perhaps most importantly, we're trying to get past our self-judgment and locate a place of gentleness and tenderness, that place where we feel deeply loved and valued and where we feel most loving of others, even if just for a moment. I'll ask the Clinton Never family to come up to light the candles for this Yom Kippur. The blessings are on page 9. With one voice, in our imagination, we stand before the heavenly court and the assembled sages of Israel, while in our synagogues we also create the sense of solemn legal proceeding. Our leaders standing at attention, holding the scroll of the Torah before the gathered community. I'll ask Elizabeth and David Bamberger to come up, and as they do, I'll ask everyone to please rise for Kol Nidre, page 18.
ad Yom Kippurim haba.
All shall be forgiven, the entire community of Israel and the stranger who lives in their midst, for all have gone astray in error. Moses prayed to God, as you've been faithful to this people ever since Egypt, please forgive their failings now in keeping with your boundless love. And God responded, I forgive as you have asked. Continue with the Baruch Hu, page 22. Seated, continue our service on page 25. Day and night are yours, creative spirit of the universe, the muted colors of twilight, the radiance of dawn. Yours are the spreading wings of light, the deepening shadows of darkness and ever-changing drama. In the human heart, too, the struggle between darkness and light unfolds. From sunlit heights of generosity, the human heart sinks to the gloomy depths of selfishness. Although we fall, you give us the strength to rise again. You call on those who hurt through word or deed to break free from wrongdoing and return to you. All who hear your call to goodness are embraced. All who reject emptiness and evil find acceptance from you. We come into your presence this night of Kol Nidre, aware that our shortcomings and weaknesses are many, yet encouraged by your promise of forgiveness. We choose freely the path of repentance, restoring wholeness to our lives and holiness to the world. Baruch atah Adonai hamariv ha'aravim. Blessed are you, Adonai, creator of twilight and dusk. Continue on page 27. We pause in reverence before the gift of self. The vessel shatters, the divine spark shines through, and our solitary self becomes a link in Israel's golden chain. For what we are by sharing, and as we share, we move toward the light. We pause in reverence before the mystery of presence, the near and far reality of God. Not union, but communion is our aim. And we approach the mystery with deeds. Words lead us to the edge of action, but it is deeds that bring us closer to the God of light. We pause in terror before the human deed, the cloud of annihilation, the concentrations for death, the cruelly casual way of each to each. But in the stillness of this hour, we find our way from darkness into light. May we find our life so precious that we cannot but share it with others. That light may shine brighter than 1,000 suns with the presence among us of the God of light, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael, for you are blessed, the one who loves your people, Israel. Shema, page 28.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed.
Haftarah, page 30.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך. ושינתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך. וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך. וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך. וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך ובשעריך. וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך. וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך ובשעריך. וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך.
Adonai Elohechem Emet. You should have picked up one of these handouts as you came in. It is a responsive reading from the Siddur, from the prayer book Sharei Zahav, Golden Gates. It's the LGBTQ plus synagogue in San Francisco. Our past president, Win Bagan, was kind enough to bring me back a copy of it, and we've gotten good use out of it. And we feel this reading, we kind of found our way to it, and it really speaks to both deeply as to who we are at Congregation Kol Ami and who we aspire to be. So it's my pleasure to call on Janet Mark and Frank Lipsman to lead us in this responsive reading.
When the world is about to crush me with all of its weight, when people have been too cruel because of their ignorance, when my government tries to silence me, when I feel a sense of helplessness during these uncertain times, when I am lost and tossed about in the day-to-day maze of activity, When loneliness slowly creeps into my life like the evening mist. When I feel isolated at times. When friends seem nowhere to be found in the daily grind. When I sometimes lose sight of what I can do for the community. When I feel that my family is scattered hundreds of miles away. When the cacophony outside is too much and I need to be soothed. When I run around and take the simple things for granted. When I am gone and have left only my name.
Continue our service now. The prayer for redemption from Shirat Hayam, the Song at the Sea, Micha Mocha, page 40.
ראו בניך בוקי הים לפני משה זה לי כולם הודו אנו בלי אמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגלו מיד חסדך ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גל ישראל.
Continue now as we pray every time on this Yom Kippur Eve and on every night when we conclude our day and lay down for the night, we ask for God's sheltering presence and protection. Hashkivenu, page 42.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom V'hamidenu Shomrenu L'chaim. In the darkness of the night, when I'm scared to close my eyes, won't you ease my troubled mind? Hashkivenu, Hashkivenu. May you guide us on our way, walk beside us, keep us safe. Hear these humble words we pray. Hashkivenu, ufros aleinu, sukkah shlomecha, in the shadow of your wings. Ufros aleinu, sukkah shlomecha, in the promise morning brings. Hashkivenu, so much heartache, so much hurt, so many hungers, so many search for your shelter and peace on earth. Hashkivenu, Hashkivenu, Adonai, Hashkivenu, Baruch atah Adonai haporeh sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim.
We rise for Chatzi Kaddish, page 45.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash me'rabah. Amen. Ve'alma divrach yiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh. V'chayechon u'b'yomechon ובחיי לכל בית ישראל. עגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמך במברך לעולם ולעמי ישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתעורר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמר קודשה בריחו לעילא ולעילא מן קור בחטא ושירתה ושבחתה ונחמתה גם ירבה עלמא ויאמרו אמן.
The meditation on page 46 leads us into the silent Amidah, beginning on page 48 and going through page 81. Pray the words on the page or the words in your heart this Erev Yom Kippur, and when you've completed the Amidah, you may be seated. If you are still praying the Amidah, please feel free to continue. We continue our service now with a prayer for peace. Shalom Rav, page 78.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tarsim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Atah melech adon lechol hashalom ki atah melech adon lechol hashalom
Our God and God of all generations, may our prayers reach your presence, and when we turn to you, do not be indifferent. Adonai, we are arrogant and stubborn, claiming to be blameless and free of sin. In truth, we have stumbled and strayed, we have done wrong. We rise for the confession vidui, bottom of page 82. I da da die die, I da da die die, I da da die die die. Ashamnu, Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu Dofi, Dibarnu Dofi, Evinu, Evinu, Vehirshanu, Vehirshanu, Zadnu, Zadnu, Tamasnu, Tamasnu, Tafanu Sheker, Tafanu Sheker, Yatsnu Ra, Yatsnu Ra, Kizavnu, Kizavnu, Lahatsnu, Lahatsnu, Maradnu, Maradnu, Niatsnu, Niatsnu, Sararnu, Sararnu, Avinu, Avinu, Pahashanu, Pahashanu, Sararnu, Sararnu, Kishinu Oref, Kishinu Oref, Rashanu, Rashanu, Shichatnu, Shichatnu, Tiavnu, Tiavnu, Tahinu, Tahinu, Tihitanu, Tihitanu. Of these wrongs we are guilty, we betray, we steal, we scorn, we act perversely, we are cruel, we scheme, we are violent, we slander, we devise evil, we lie, we ridicule, we disobey, we abuse, we defy, we corrupt, we commit crimes, we are hostile, we are stubborn, we are immoral. We kill, we spoil, we go astray, we lead others astray. Page 84, our turning from your mitzvot and laws of goodness is a hollow pursuit. You are just concerning all that happens in our lives. Your way is the way of truth, while ours leads to error. What can we say to you whose existence is beyond time and space? What words of ours can reach your realm, beyond the clouds, beyond heaven itself? Every hidden mystery, every revelation, surely you know them all. You know the secrets of the universe and the secrets of the human heart. You know and understand us, for you examine our inner lives. Nothing is concealed from you, nothing hidden from your sight. Eternal One, our God and God of our ancestors, we pray that this be your will. Forgive all our wrongs, pardon us for every act of injustice, help us atone for all our moral failures. On page 86, we read responsively the Hebrew to the English. Al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'zadon v'visgaga ve'al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'dibor peh.
The ways we have wronged you deliberately and by mistake, and harm we have caused in your world through the words of our mouths.
Al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'imutz halev ve'al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'divshut peh.
The ways we have wronged you by hardening our hearts, and harm we have caused in your world through careless speech.
Al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'chakash u'chazav ve'al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'irchilut.
The ways we have wronged you through lies and deceit, and harm we have caused in your world through gossip and rumor.
Al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'flilut ve'al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'zizul horim u'morim.
The ways we have wronged you by judging others unfairly, and harm we have caused in your world through disrespect to parents and teachers.
Al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'vidu peh ve'al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'hona'at re'ah.
The ways we have wronged you through insincere apologies, and harm we have caused in your world by mistreating a friend or neighbor.
Al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'hozek yad ve'al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'masa uvmatan.
The ways we have wronged you through violence and abuse, and harm we have caused in your world through dishonesty in business.
V'al kulam Elohai slichot, salach lanu, machal lanu, kaper lanu.
For all these failures of judgment and will, God forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement.
Page 88, Al-chet shatanu lefanecha balu uvasater, Al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'frikat ol.
The ways we have wronged you openly and secretly, and harm we have caused in your world by losing self-control.
Al-chet shatanu lefanecha bilu arayot, Al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'ma'achal uvmishteh.
The ways we have wronged you through sexual immorality,
And harm we have caused in your world through consumption of food and drink.
Al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'yetzer hara, Al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'meshek uvmarbit.
the ways we have wronged you by giving in to our hostile impulses, and harm we have caused in your world through greed and exploitation.
Al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'latzon, Al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'ntiyat garon.
The ways we have wronged you through cynicism and scorn, and harm we have caused in your world through arrogant behavior.
Al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'sinat chinam, Al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'tum'at sefatayim. Al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'lashon hara, Al-chet shatanu lefanecha b'tzarut ayin. V'al kulam Elohai slichot, salach lanu, machal lanu, kaper lanu.
They are
seated. So in rabbinic chat rooms, at least the ones that I kind of hang out in, we trade ideas back and forth on all sorts of things, theological and practical and administrative. And leading up to this time of year, we spend a lot of time trading ideas on sermons. And the one sermon that nobody wants to touch, known as the third rail for us rabbis, is a sermon on Israel. So, of course, tonight I'm hitting on the third rail and giving you a sermon on Israel. A sermon on Israel is almost guaranteed to raise the ire of someone in your shul. Up till now, here at Congregation Kol Ami, I've pretty assiduously avoided the topic, not so much out of some sense of fear. I've certainly participated in enough rallies, protests, and civil disobedience to aggravate somebody. And besides, I see a diminished amount of fear as one of the few bonuses of old age. I'm generally pretty ornery, prone to stir up at least a little good trouble, as the late great Congressman John Lewis likes to put it. And rather being dissuaded by fear, the truth is that in comparison to many other shuls here in Kansas City, we've been a lot less Israel-centric. Our focus here at Kol Ami tends to be more attuned to issues here in our diaspora United States. I think there's another dynamic, and that is up until recently, we never really questioned the good intent that has accompanied Israel's existence. We saw Israel as an embodiment of our highest Jewish ideals. It is the democratic Jewish state, Jewish as in our Jewish homeland, and democratic as in it cherished freedom for its people. Freedom of press, freedom to exercise a right to vote in open and fair elections, freedom of religious expression, Judaism on a range from ultra-Orthodox to secular, a country containing the most important shrines for both Christians and Muslims as well. All that has clearly changed, or maybe it was never quite as ideal as we thought it to be. Possibly it was subject to the same challenges and morally ambiguous decision-making as any other burgeoning democracy. And notwithstanding its long existence and our long attachment to haaretz, to the land. So before digging in to what Israel has been, to where Israel has now arrived as we enter the year 5784, I guess I feel some need to burnish my Israel credentials. By the way, does it mean anything if your own grandkids walk out on your sermon? Asking for a friend. So, I'm not here to hate on Israel or to, God forbid, present as the self-loathing Jew. I've loved Israel since my youth in Hebrew school and see myself in a position at this moment to either seek critical change in order that Israel will survive as the democratic Jewish state or watch it go down in authoritarian flames. So my Israel story, and I apologize if you've heard it before, my first, best, and most influential Hebrew school teacher, Tzivia Gaba, and her husband Joe, Zichrona Livracha, both of blessed memory, were chalutzim. They were Israeli pioneers. And actually, we only learned much later in life that they were gun runners for the Irgun, a story that I know in my formative years I would have found much more fascinating. My early Hebrew school education was totally Israel-centric. The Hebrew we were taught was not biblical nor prayer book Hebrew per se, but rather a conversational method of modern Hebrew known as Biyad Halashon. During a trip to visit my sister at Camp Ramon, Wisconsin, we were out eating dinner at a restaurant in beautiful Conover, Wisconsin, with those same Gabas, also with my parents, and my father at the dinner table insisted to my Hebrew school teacher, Tzivia, to prove he was getting his money's worth by having me recite a lesson from Biyad Halashon there in the restaurant. This is one of many paths on my Jewish road to therapy. Getting the solo at the Hebrew School Assembly on the then new Jewish song, Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, Jerusalem of Gold, was a highlight of my Hebrew school experience. I attended Herzl Camp in Webster, Wisconsin, and yes, named after the founder of Zionism, Theodore Herzl. This is also the same camp attended by Bob Dylan, by the way. And the connection goes further. One of the directors of Herzl Camp back in the 50s and then again in the late 60s was Rabbi Bill Horn, who it turned out is the father of the dean of my seminary, Dr. Ora Horn-Prauser. Ora related a story to me that Bob Dylan was somewhat challenging in his youth, and to smooth out the rough edges, her father taught Dylan how to box to work out some of his pent-up energy. Heading into adulthood, my strong connection to Israel continued. I was on our Jewish Federation's Israel and Overseas Committee. Our committee traveled to Israel to meet with our sister city and region partners in Ramla and Gezer. And as it turned out, they were interested in our money, but not interested in our input as to how to spend it. I co-chaired a community-wide mission and visited Israel as part of the Hellsberg Leadership Program. I was part of an 8-member group from all over the country on a 36-hour mission to Israel during the height of the Second Intifada, when you could roll a bowling ball down Ben Yehuda Street in downtown Jerusalem and not hit anyone. 2 of my boys did high school semesters in Israel, and the third did a summer exchange program in Israel. Their high school semester programs were also during the Intifada. And the eldest, who's here tonight, having been with his group at a Cafe Hillel in Jerusalem's German colony, where the following evening a surgeon and his daughter were killed at that same Cafe Hillel by a suicide bomber. I vividly remember receiving the call from his program director that his group was okay. All of which is to say that my commitment to Israel is not passive, or agree or disagree with my views on Israeli policy and how we view our relationship with Israel, but do not question my loyalty to Israel. My last time in Israel has been a while ago. After participating in a Hebrew study program in Haifa, my wife Faye met me for some travel time in Israel. We spent time in Jerusalem, traveled to Jordan for 3 days, Cyprus, both the Turkish and Greek side of Cyprus, where never the twain shall meet, and we ended up in Tel Aviv. My biggest takeaway from our time in Israel was that it was no longer Jerusalem that was my favorite place to visit, but rather Tel Aviv. Jerusalem seemed to have an undercurrent of increased hate and divisiveness between Jews and Israeli Arabs, really hate directed by Jews toward Israeli Arabs, and divisiveness amongst Jews, a sign I should have been more aware of as signaling storm clouds on the horizon. Tel Aviv, by contrast, seemed to exude what I had perceived as the real dream of Israel. Jews sitting together at the Bialik Cafe, arguing politics, theology, and philosophy over their espressos. Bialik Cafe at the entrance to Bialik Street, where you find the home of Israel's first poet laureate, Chaim Bialik. It was Jews just living life as Jews without having to look over their shoulders. The Jewish center of religious life in Jerusalem, on the other hand, such as the Kotel Ma'ariv, our Western Wall, seemed to lose its significance, a place of strife and tension rather than peace. Much like the prophet Jeremiah pointing to the danger and hypocrisy of holding on to ritual while at the same time treating others with disdain and disrespect. So without going through the entirety of Zionist history, a little background is helpful. The Zionism that found its inception in the mid-19th century was being promoted with starkly differing theories. As an overarching idea, the tension embodied in Zionism is one between classical Jewish messianism, a time when God will bring in messianic times, including the gift of Eretz Yisrael, versus modern Zionism, an age of individual liberty, national freedom, and a time of economic and social justice. Within the notion of modern Zionism, a prominent, if not singular, goal was to both normalize the place of Jews in the world and still reserve a unique destiny for Jews, a grand, modern, and progressive role that Jews alone were destined to play. Certainly, a priority of Zionism and settlement in the land of Israel was simply for Jews to be able to survive. Yet, from its inception, we had to be about more than our survival, to be more than being about what we were fighting against. The land of Israel is not simply something given to us by God. The land is something we have either earned or, if we do not act justly, if we oppress the stranger and defile our interpersonal relationships, the Torah tells us in chapter 18 of the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, that the land will vomit us out. I know that's really gross imagery, but hoping it might be helpful as you fast on this Yom Kippur. One modern Zionist worth a mention is Achad Ha'am, also known as Asher Zvi Ginsburg. Ginsburg changed his name to Ahad Ha'am, which is translated as one of the people. There's irony in this, as Ahad Ha'am was not what you would call a people person. He was also known as the agnostic rabbi, so in addition to not being a people person, he was really not much of a God person. And what I find interesting about Ahad Ha'am is he put forth an idea that prophetically based Jewish ethics emanating from Israel could be an example to the diaspora world and beyond our Jewish world. I find it interesting because it's the version of Israel I was raised on. It was in my youth in Israel to be proud of, that notwithstanding being surrounded on all sides by hostile enemies, Israel stuck to its moral compass. So we all remember the Golda Meir quote, "We can forgive you for killing our kids. We cannot forgive you for making us kill your kids." Never mind that this moral idealism, really a sense of Jewish exceptionalism, did not always mesh with reality. We were never quite that good. At the very least, it served as an ideal to strive for, something we as Jews should always aspire to be. For Ahad Ha'am, he saw the potential of Israel to be the center for lived Jewish ethics and culture that would spread out and impact Jews in the diaspora and serve as an example for the rest of the world. Add God back into the mix, and I'd be all about Ahad Ha'am, which brings us to Israel in the year 5784. I'd already intended on doing an Erev Yom Kippur sermon on Israel. That intention was reinforced by an article that came out in the Israeli newspaper Haaretz just a few days ago, really right before Rosh Hashanah. Written by Israeli journalist Alon Pincus, the title of the article is "American Rabbis Tell Your Congregants the Israel You Knew is a Relic of the Past." Pincus recognizes that the topic of Israel for us North American rabbis has been the third rail, a topic of very mixed and contentious feelings, all embodied in a paradigm that Israel is a unifying force for Jewish people everywhere. Pincus states that this paradigm is no longer relevant. Pincus points to the anti-democratic coup presently being undertaken by the Netanyahu coalition government, diminishing the needed check by the Israeli Supreme Court on an increasingly authoritarian executive branch, and in Israel seeing an increase in legislation being fomented by the ultra-Orthodox, which necessarily shift Israel toward theocracy, where ostensibly a singular view of God will control civic life and all life in Israel. This is clearly a dangerous move off of an anti-democratic cliff, and a move in which we as non-ultra-Orthodox Jews are treated as not being Jews at all. Pincus points to some 225 pieces of legislation floating through the Israeli Knesset that would essentially write Reform and conservative Jews out of existence. And by the way, 80% of Jews here in America identify as either conservative or Reform. There are a plethora of storm clouds that put Israel's status as the democratic Jewish state in peril. For this Erev Yom Kippur, I'll only name a couple. One storm cloud is connected to Meir Kahane, notwithstanding that he's been dead since 1990. Kahane founded the Jewish Defense League with a commitment to violence as a response to any perceived aggression toward Jews. He was convicted multiple times of domestic terrorism, both in the United States and in Israel. Kahane was elected to one term in the Israeli Knesset. Subsequently, he was boycotted by most of the other members of that Knesset and ultimately caused the Knesset to pass a law banning parties in Israel that were racist and or undemocratic. What is most relevant in regard to Israel's present status was Kahane's determination to rid Israel of any and all non-Jews. Under Kahane's plan, non-Jews could either stay in Israel with the status of resident strangers with severely limited rights, voluntarily leave Israel with some compensation for their property, or be forcibly removed from the land. This is most pertinent as it reflects on present cabinet members and present policy by Netanyahu's coalition government. Two members of that coalition, Netanyahu's cabinet, are Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, both considered followers of Meir Kahane. Ben-Gvir, like Kahane, has been convicted of domestic terrorism. He's been described by Knesset leaders as the authentic representation of the most racist, Kahanist government in Israel's history. He's been an advocate for settler violence against Palestinians in the West Bank, and he's been accused of inciting settler attacks on IDF soldiers in the West Bank. As Netanyahu's defense minister, he has a large say over Israeli policy in the West Bank, a policy that includes an increase in settlements at the expense of Palestinians, with an eye toward removing Palestinians from the West Bank altogether. And while I have always rejected inflammatory references to Israel as an apartheid state, Ben-Gvir is doing all he can to bring that reference into reality. Smotrich has been denounced by over 70 American Jewish organizations. He's the lead proponent over the present effort by the Netanyahu coalition to essentially obliterate any possibility of the Israeli Supreme Court to provide a needed check on the executive branch in Israel. Smotrich, as finance minister, has redirected millions of dollars from the education and interior ministries to settlements in the West Bank, including settlements that the Israeli government has already declared illegal. Jewish settlers, with full encouragement and support of Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, are perpetrating a campaign of terror against Palestinians, destroying homes and property. Both Gvir and Smotrich, in addition to being advocates for violence against Palestinians in the West Bank, are an ongoing threat to Israeli Arabs, Israel's LGBTQ+ community, immigrants, women, including laws to prevent the mixing of women and men, and any Israeli who opposes their views. Consider their presence in an Israeli cabinet as a threat no different than as if a member of the KKK or a neo-Nazi organization was appointed to a cabinet position here in the States. The other storm is the judicial coup that would render the Israeli Supreme Court virtually toothless in providing a needed check to an increasingly authoritarian Israeli executive branch that is running amok. Just to quickly review, the Knesset passed legislation that would limit the Israel Supreme Court's ability to review reasonableness of any past legislation. And since there's no constitution in Israel, only a declaration of independence, a free and unfettered Supreme Court is the only check against an executive and legislative branch that seeks to establish anti-democratic authoritarian laws. Also, because Israel lacks a constitution, the right and obligation for the Supreme Court to review the reasonableness of Netanyahu or the Knesset's action is the only wall of protection for marginalized communities. The risk comes not only from Netanyahu's cabinet, but also from the ultra-Orthodox who are pushing for more power with all-male rabbinic councils, attacking the rights of women, queer Israelis, secular Israelis, Israeli Arabs, and Palestinians. This is before mentioning the elephant in the room that Netanyahu is facing credible corruption charges, including bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. So where does this leave us now in relation to Israel? On the front end, let me be clear, this is not about giving away the store. We as Jews need a democratic Jewish state wherein we can live our lives as Jews. Hamas and Hezbollah really do traffic in anti-Semitism, murder Jews, and want to drive Israel into the sea. As I have said on many occasions, I yearn for peace, and when peace is finally achieved, I think Israel should still be around to enjoy it. That said, I do believe and have always believed that Israel has to be about more than our mere survival. I mentioned one vision of Israel in Zionist history through the eyes of Echad Ha'am, a vision of a place where we live out our highest and best Jewish values. I do see Israel's status and conduct as a litmus test for how we are doing as Jews, and right now I would have to say, not so good. As Peter Beinart said in his book, The Crisis of Zionism, we as American Jews need a different and more positive story instead of the long-standing story in which we are history's permanent victims. As Jews, we need to hold on to a vision of what we are for and not just what we are against. So during a trip to Israel, Faye and I were having Shabbos dinner with friends who had made Aliyah to Israel many years before. During dinner, we were discussing the state of things in Israel, to which I rendered an opinion. I was told that as a non-Israeli, I had no right to give my views to Israelis about Israel. I disagree. As American Jews, we not only have the right to give our views, but an obligation to do so. Rabbi Jill Jacobs, the executive director of Truah, the Rabbinic Call for Human Rights, states that we no longer should see our choices as between defending the Israeli government's every move or opposing Israel's existence. As she points out, the present reality of Israel is that it contains nearly half of the world's Jewish population, but also has jurisdiction over millions of non-citizen Palestinians. Another part of the present reality, as Jacobs observes, is that the Israeli government is sinking further and further into fascism and even cynical alliances with dictators like the anti-Semite Viktor Orban in Hungary and its very tepid support of Ukraine so as to somehow stay on Putin's good side. The relationship between Israel and American Jews must be a two-way street. We are not bystanders in regard to the future of Jews and Judaism. Just this past week, leading rabbis gathered at the UN to pray and to protest Netanyahu's visit to the UN. We need to respond as American Jews, respond by giving our financial support to those organizations that are truly working for a more democratic Israel and for the rights of those who've been marginalized and under attack. We should not be giving our money to Jewish organizations who support the present Netanyahu government, or even if they have been mute in their position on Israel. It's no longer okay to simply support any government in Israel or to ignore the threat of an authoritarian Israel to not only the future existence of Israel, but the threat it poses to Jews everywhere. We need to let our elected leaders, President Biden and our congressional leaders, know that we need them to pressure Israel to act in a more democratic way. I recently met with Congressman Cleaver as part of a J Street delegation to let him know our concerns in regard to the anti-democratic shift in Israel and that we would have his back in supporting rightful criticism. While protecting Israeli security, we as American Jews need to act as a rodef shalom, a pursuer of peace. This means we need to stop demonizing all Palestinians as our mortal enemy. To that end, I recommend two books. One, entitled I Shall Not Hate, by Dr. Izzeldin Abelouch. It's the story of a Gaza physician whose 3 daughters were killed by Israeli soldiers, yet responded not with hate, but rather by engaging in conversations that would move toward peace between Israelis and Palestinians. The other book is This Place Together, A Palestinian's Journey to Collective Liberation. The book is co-written by Palestinian Suleiman Khatib and Penina Eilberg-Schwartz, the daughter of Rabbi Amy Eilberg, the first woman to be ordained as a rabbi by the conservative movement. And finally, as an American rabbi, let me say this. If you don't believe me or agree with my expressed views, that's more than fine, but you don't need to take my word for it. Believe the hundreds of thousands of Israelis who've consistently been on the streets protesting. As an aside, I've got to say that someone who's attended their share of rallies and protests, we should do so well in organizing people to get out on the streets and express our views. Also, don't believe me, believe IDF leaders in Israel who are in opposition to the Netanyahu government, and believe those young Israelis saying they will not report for IDF duty in service of a corrupt authoritarian government. As Peter Beinart tells us, the struggle to help the Jewish state return to its founding ideals is not a struggle for Israel alone. It's a struggle that calls all Jews because Israel is the great test for Judaism in our time. If Israeli democracy fails, it will fail all of us. No matter where we live, we will spend our lives sifting through the political, ethical, and theological rubble. So on this Yom Kippur, we pray for the strength to work for our highest ideals as Jews, to speak out forcefully for a more just world, and in the year 5784, move us further from strife and hate and closer to peace. Kain Yehi Ratzon, may that be God's will. Continue our service with Shema Kolenu, page 98.
ברחמים, ברחמים וברצון את תפילתנו. השיבנו אדוני אליך, השיבנו אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו, אל תשליכנו. אל תשליכנו. ורחם עלינו, עלינו, וקבל ברחמים, ברחמים וברצון את
Continue with Krach page 101. Avinu Malkeinu, illumine for us the path of our life. Avinu Malkeinu, be gracious to us, answer us, empower us, give us courage, for the answers are both in you and with you. Avinu Malkeinu, page 114.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu,
as we invite our cellist Matt Beckman to come back up for a short rehearing of the beautiful sounds of Kol Nidre, I invite you to take moments for meditation and introspection. Continue our service. We rise for Aleinu, page 116.
Ushtina tuzo,
18. This week we observe the ortsites of David Epstein and Pearl Kretschmer Spector, and one who was laid to rest this week, Florine Lieberman. Kaddish Chateau Mourners Kaddish, page 122. Yikadal v'yikadash Shemei Rabbah ve'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yamechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael b'agalav v'zman kari v'imru Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lomei omaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh Vitadar, Vitadar, Vitalal, Shemei Dekudisha, Brichu, Leila, Leila, Mikol, Birchata, V'shirata, Tushbachata, V'nechamata, Damiran Be'alma, Vimru, Yehei, Shlama Rabba, Min Shemaya, V'chaim, Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Vimru, Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol Yoshvei Tevel v'imru. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated. And we continue with Adonai Uri, page 124. Some quick announcements as the hour is late and we have a full day tomorrow. First and foremost, our thank yous to our incredible musicians for beautiful, spiritual, uplifting music, as always. Brendan Howard, Jana Harris, Will Perry, Roberta Solomon, Karen Engebretson, our cellist Matt Beckman, our special guest and former music director, Patrick Buckley, who's here to honor our present music director, Laura Steinell, who has announced her retirement as music director, not her retirement from Kol Ami, God forbid. That'll happen sometime in early December, but there'll be much to do between now and then to give you proper covet, proper honor. Also, thanks to our wonderful board officers and members, everybody who participated in the service. Special thanks to our Vice President of Worship, Ray Berger, who makes all this happen. Thanks to our wonderful friends at All Souls here, Haley Sylvester, Mieka Wester, our AV team. They ran tonight's sound and live stream. To our friends at All Souls, Anthony Edwards, my friends and colleagues, Reverend Dr. Kendall Gibbons and Reverend Aaron Daka Hawley. You should have the schedule for Yom Kippur Day tomorrow beginning at 10:30. The one thing I'll point out to you is, well, maybe a couple of things. One, for the Yizkor service, we have a list for people, members of Kol Ami, of those who would want their names read, the names of their lost loved ones. If you are not on that list or think you may not be on the list, we have a book outside if you want a name announced during the Isker service, the memorial service, you can sign it outside. Also, you should know that the topic for our 1 p.m. study after our morning service is the Isker service. We usually wrap up around 6 o'clock with Neela and Havdalah. It's always a wonderful way to end the day, so if you can't be here for the entire day, try and hit us toward the end. This coming Friday night is the first night of Sukkot. We will be celebrating at our home, which means you need to RSVP to me if you want to come, so we know that we can feed you and spend some time in the sukkah at our house. And then the following Friday night is Shmini Atzeret Simchas Torah, and we'll be back here for that wonderful celebration. Anything else before I call up our president for some words of welcome, Pat Clinton?
I just want to thank you very much for coming and joining us today, and this evening especially. As we begin our 24-hour observance of this most holy day, I think of it as a remarkable opportunity for all of us to examine ourselves and our commitment to our values. It is our chance to review, repent, and recommit to bettering ourselves. And while we formally do this as a community on Yom Kippur, we should do what I call after-incident reports from time to time during the year. When I was a girl, my rule of thumb, taught to me by Jiminy Cricket, and everybody over 60 knows who that is, but many of the others may not, was let your conscience be your guide. Still pretty sound advice. So tonight, as we start this journey of Tu Jaffa, I will leave you with a comment from our Machzor on page 125. On this atonement night, I pray, let the goodness within me shine forth as I struggle to overcome my flaws. Let me find forgiveness and peace. So may I journey from darkness and confusion to clarity and light. And so may I learn not to fear. Finally, I have a humble request. If you haven't donated, I encourage you to do so to help us defray the costs of these services. Every offering is welcome, no matter how large or how small. There are donation envelopes available in the lobby. And again, thank you, thank you, thank you. I also want to say a special thanks to all the Kansas City police officers who have maintained safety for us here. I'm so grateful for them. And finally, I am very, very grateful to all of you who brought donations for Martin Luther King Elementary School. The need there is tremendous, and this will help to bridge the gap. Thank you.
As is traditional on Yom Kippur, we conclude our service with the Yigdal.
Yigdal Elohim Chai, v'yishtabach, nimtza v'zhiuto, echad v'im yachid, ke'ichudo, yedam legal mezof le'achduto, en lo demut haguf,
For those fasting, may it be one of meaning, and please God stay healthy, and for everybody, Shana Tova.